is Alison Post, and I'm a professor in the political science department at UC Berkeley. I'm here to talk about some research funded by the Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity that I've been conducting with some colleagues across different fields. So our work has focused on the cybersecurity of what we might call smart city technologies. And by this term, we mean technologies that are utilized by local governments that involve interconnected devices that draw on real-time data. They're usually intended to increase the efficiency and transparency of local government operations. We asked two related questions. The first is which of these various technologies constitute the greatest cybersecurity risks? And the second is how voter support for investments in cyber protection can be improved. With respect to the first question, we're responding to a set of debates within the urban policy community that really pit techno-optimists against techno-pessimists. The optimists think about all the potential advantages of integrating new technology for public administration, whereas the pessimists are really focused on concerns about privacy and particularly cyber attack. And so what we're doing in this project is really trying to assess the extent to which cyber technologies, smart city technologies actually vary pretty considerably in the risks that they pose. The results of our work have already been published in a public report that's posted on the CLTC website for those of you that want to learn more. So the starting point for our analysis is basically to think about why technologies might vary. And we can think about this in three ways. The first is that technologies may vary in terms of the underlying vulnerability of the particular technology that's used. And so this can relate to the size of the attack surface, the potential entry points for cyber attacks, can also stem from complexity in the systems. The second is that across technologies, we're likely to see different levels of interest from potential threat actors, and particularly capable threat actors like nation states. And then third, across these different technologies, they're going to be associated with impacts of cyber attacks that really vary pretty dramatically. So what we did was reach out to cybersecurity experts with a survey in which we asked them to rank 9 different smart city technologies on each of these 3 dimensions. The survey was distributed within professional associations that have many cybersecurity experts as members. And then we did complementary case study work. To briefly summarize our findings, what we found is that across these 9 technologies, basically the same technologies were ranked as particularly vulnerable in technical terms, as attractive to nation states for cyber attacks, and impactful if a successful attack was to occur. And so these top 3 were emergency and security alert systems, street video surveillance systems, and smart traffic lights and signals systems. So we could imagine, because you have this confluence of technical vulnerability and interest in attack by capable actors, that these are the ones that local governments should be more concerned about and think harder about cyber protections if they do choose to move forward with adopting these technologies. Whereas for a bunch of other ones, cyber experts were really much less concerned about cyber attacks. And I should state that these differences are significant in statistical terms, even with the small sample of respondents that we had. The second question that we address is how we can encourage or improve public support for expenditures on cyber protections for infrastructure agencies. And here what we were interested in doing is basically looking at the effect of changing the time frame over which attack probabilities, the probabilities of cyber attacks, are presented to members of the public. We conducted a survey within a representative sample of 7,000 California voters to assess the effect of this intervention. So let me make this a bit more concrete. In our survey, we asked individuals whether they would be willing to support a $2 surcharge on their monthly water bill to finance system upgrades to the IT system to protect it against cyber attacks. And in this prompt, we changed the time frame over which the probability of an attack was stated, while keeping the probability essentially equivalent in quantitative terms. So we stated the probability of our 1-year versus 5-year versus 10 versus 30-year time frame. What we found is that stating risks over a 30-year time frame with a concomitantly higher probability was much more effective. with these voters than a 1-year time frame, whereas the 5 and 10-year time frame was really no different than a 1-year time frame. And this suggests that individuals really register in cognitive terms the probability of attack to a much greater extent when the number is larger, simply because it's stated over a longer time frame. Now, this effect was strongest amongst those who did not consider cyber attacks to be particularly likely at the outset of our survey. It was not effective, however, amongst those who identified as Republican or stated at the outset of our survey that they didn't trust their local water provider. So this is potentially a useful way to approach voters who are not particularly informed about cybersecurity issues, but it's not going to work with the full electorate, is what we learned through our survey. So thanks very much, and I'm looking forward to your questions and feedback during the Q&A.